Gulfstream Park through the years with that February 2nd, 1939 opening day. We continue to write a new chapter of the 2020 spring meet here in Hallandale Beach. A look at that clubhouse turn and just that massive turf course, which is really bucolic. And I'll tell you, it may have been a little frustrating on this Saturday afternoon going back to the amount of rain that we had last week through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But the proof now is in that picture outside, Acacia Courtney, with that turf just looking so lush, and it'll get plenty of use over the next few hours.
Yes, it certainly will. We did have some turf racing back yesterday afternoon in the latter part of the card, but good to see turf racing back in action all day today. So no need to adjust your tickets as far as that does go, like you might have had to do over the last few days. So we're looking forward to that and some really solid races on this Saturday.
Yeah, when you and I have basically Gulfstream Park surrounded, I am housed and set up, as is my usual spot here in our clubhouse studios on the third floor. You've got things covered down on the apron and, of course, on this show in our paddock set studios, and for good reason. We do have 11 races. We've got that gigantic Rainbow Six guarantee. We've also got some unfinished business from yesterday, and I'm just wondering, Beat the Expert, your swan song, because you're leaving in a week to go back to New York for Belmont Park's, their abbreviated spring meet. How'd you do yesterday in Beat the Expert?
I thought I did pretty well. I still have a few people who are pretty sharp, so congratulations, Miguel, Danny, and Christopher. Thanks for playing. Thanks to everybody who played. We had over 200 participants once again. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back in action with Beat the Expert next week. Who's up? Ronnie next week?
Ronnie I think is going. Yeah, he'll have the finishing touches, and maybe we'll lay low with Beat the Expert until Florida Sire Stakes, Summit of Speed, or maybe a random Saturday during the summertime here.
Yeah, it's always fun. And again, a big thank you to everybody that's played all throughout the championship meet and continuing on to the spring.
Definitely, as we continue on and we're really getting things underway, just fresh and right off the chopping block, as they say, with this Memorial Day holiday weekend upon us. And a friendly reminder here, we're all about the friendly reminders on this broadcast, that we do indeed have a 12-race Monday afternoon program because of the Memorial Day holiday, beginning at 12:45, 12:50 Eastern. That is a card that's got some big fields. I finished it this morning, and some solid maiden races on the program as well.
It certainly is. We have a great Sunday card for you, and then come right back in action for a great Monday card as well. So big thank you to everybody that's continuing to watch Gulfstream, and hope you tune in on Monday on expressbet.com or FirstBet or wherever you watch your races.
We had a couple of singles, big price, 50-1 and higher singles in yesterday's 10th race finale for the whole enchilada and the jackpot Rainbow Six. But in the end, Arad Ortiz picked up his third win on the card, and just a dominant performance from the big odds-on favorite in Dylan Rocks. That thickens the plot, so to speak, as we come up on the starting point. Race number 6 a bit later, Acacia. We have got a lot of bread in that guaranteed Rainbow Six.
1.1 million guaranteed. There's a carryover of close to 700,000 already. So there's a lot of money just to start in that pool, but we'll have a guaranteed pool of 1.1 million. You definitely want to take a look at that. It's races 6 through 11 on this Saturday afternoon, as we do start a little bit later than we have the last couple of days. So starts in race number 6, just a 20-cent base wager, and you can take it all down and get that giant pool. And as you like to say, Jason, that's a lot of zeros.
That is a lot of zeros and a lot of room. We've got a lot of space, and that's a good thing on that lower third there. And quite a bit of space and quite a bit of individual numbers in that space on the left side of our television screens, because we do have a turf opener with a good-sized field to get the proceedings underway at Gulfstream Park. In fact, the turf course wins the majority today with 6 races altogether on the grass, and you're going to take a little stab at this early pick 5.
I am. I do have a single coming up a little bit later on in the 4th. I'm too deep in this first race. I thought Cardiac Kid and Lime Teeny coming out of that race on April 30th were the logical 2 in here. I didn't use Oxburger, who is, to be fair, a fresh face coming in from the fairgrounds and dropping in class and is taking a lot of early money. So interested to see what that one looks like. 3 deep in the second, I spread in race number 3. That one I thought was actually well more than just the morning line favorite and well brush my tooth. I don't trust that filly in here, though she could win, but I thought you could potentially have some other live horses in there, and I'm just going to stand alone in the 4th with Witch Hunter off the claim for Victor Barboza, and that allowed me to spread in a couple of other races.
She's probably a very likely winner, Witch Hunter in the 4th. She was 1-5 last time out and came up second, but her effort, basically every one of her efforts, say perhaps her performance last November 3rd at GPW, just is by far the benchmark in that upcoming 4th race field this afternoon. I'm taking a small shot against her for the win, but she's hands down a very likely winner at a very short price. Not really dealing with that kind of a favorite in this upcoming turf race, and maybe it goes without saying, as we do have a 12-horse field to start the festivities in this $25,000 to $20,000 maiden claimer. Off the bat, I felt as though the biggest bullet point or narrative might just be the 2 horses you and I have boxed up here in the 2 Cardiac Kid and the 5 Lime Teeny, with them coming out of that rematch race from back on April 30th. For both horses, I think they were just respectable efforts, and they both, to me, Acacia, look just like very reasonable, logical players here in the 1st.
I do think it's encouraging that Lime Teeny showed a lot more speed in his second start. Obviously, you don't love a 6-figure horse that doesn't run a step in his debut and then drops right down, but sometimes it's just a matter of where does he belong, and it looks like this is the level that does seem right. So blinkers going on should be logical. I gave a slight edge to Cardiac Kid, who I had liked on top last time, and he's just been a touch more consistent overall, and that was the biggest reason I gave him the nod today.
I've got Oxburger in the mix. His turf races out of town were okay. He takes a significant drop in for $25,000 for an outfit and a barn we just haven't seen all that much of here in this part of the country, but he could be dangerous and certainly seems well spotted in his South Florida debut against Kenny's horse who you picked and the Todd Colt that I picked in the 5 Lime Teeny. I see you've got the 12 Waterwall towards the outside for Brian Lynch, and he is a first-time drop down in this spot.
He's also a fresh gelding, so let's hope that that helps him take a big step forward. I like the jockey change to Amisael Jaramillo as well. Thought I might get a little bit of a price beyond those 2 rematching ones.
Definitely 18-1 in the early wagering, very early wagering with about an hour out from that first race. Next 3 here at Fast and Good Gulfstream Park will be run on the main track as we transition into Saturday's 2nd. And for a $10,000 3-and-up maiden claimer, I feel there's a lot more perhaps going on than maybe usual in a race like this, where I think more often than not you're probably dealing with a horse who might be a big favorite or close to even money, give or take, or maybe a race where there's a big favorite and a clear second choice and the others look pretty hopeless on paper. This isn't that kind of race, and I do like, I mean, right off the bat, you've got a couple of very high-profile trainer changes in the race, including Wilshire Diamond for Michael Maker, who we both have third, capping our respective tries, and the horse that you and I both picked on top, who's first time Brian Lynch in the number 10, Voices in the Darkness.
And it seems like a few that had been in Rusty Arnold's barn did not leave Florida with him and stayed here. But I thought that this one was definitely a useful gelding. He showed speed last time out. I think that he could potentially, with that speed in a race where you don't entirely have faith in others, maybe to pass horses so much, and I think he could do well in Brian's barn. So I, like you, thought this was a good spot for him. But I agree, and I think that kind of makes it fun. We'll see if Capitan Fofo can stretch out, and Macho D'Oro was probably the one with the best last out race, but can he repeat that?
I underestimated him my first blush, and I think I did so just because that last race, I looked at it at above 50-1.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly night and day compared to his 6 previous tries before that, but he ran legitimately well last time out. Maybe he's just a different horse at this stage of the game. We'll find out if that was indeed a fluky effort as he runs against a bulky field that includes Capitan Fofo and Concilium, one of 2 in the race for trainer Antonio Sano, who I'll tell you, Acacia, in races like this, Antonio, he really comes at you with the barrage, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. It seems like he's always got a couple in this kind of race. But as we've mentioned before, the barn has been on a really good run lately, and especially with somebody like Antonio, whose barn, when it gets hot, it tends to stay hot. Even a nice 2-year-old winner yesterday in Swaggy George, maybe 2-year-old maiden special weight, not typically the type of race we would entirely expect to see with a performance like that.
Absolutely. I noticed Antonio had won 8 races, has won 8 races over the last 30 calendar days, and that's basically a third or better than a third of his entire production through the first 4 months of 2020. So, indeed, that barn is firing on all cylinders. Here's the third. We go with a cast of 6 on the main track in a race where I looked around and we had an early scratch of the 7, Lady Noy, who was going to be a big price. I just opted for, like as you had said with the first, a fresh face here. In fact, 2 of them. I took the number 5, Well Brush My Tooth, who maybe is a little tough to fully grasp or gauge just with the fact that she had run against far better, but quite some time ago with her last start coming in the Ruthless at the Big A in late January, I felt as though a dry track might help her out, and the other new face in the race, the one, My Sister's Keeper, looked to me like they just got the perfect prep for trainer Mike Deeney under her belt last time out up north at Tampa Bay Downs.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by My Sister's Keeper. I really fooled around with almost putting her on top in here. I think that this could be a great place for her, who's definitely, we'd have to imagine, a sharper performance second off the bench. My biggest question with Well Brush My Tooth is that I think you're going to see the fact that she ran in a stake in a higher level race at Laurel. She broke her maiden for special weight. Her buyer speed figures are really nothing crazy or nothing really special or exciting. She's been running fine, and to be honest, she's actually a pretty snug fit in here. Besides her speed, and yes, in general, her first 3 races on paper just visually look strong, I don't think that she's a huge standout in here, so I'm hoping that the number 5, Smitten for Smitty, who picks up Nick Juarez today, really took a big step up, and nobody was beating Lori Lupis last time out. So I'm hoping this just might be a little bit of a more realistic place.
All right, she's in the mix for you. We both have at varying degrees the 6, Let's Be Honest, who I found, and you talk about speed figures, she might be consistently the fastest horse in the race. Man, I felt going in, as far as her quality and ability, her last race was a great spot for her. She didn't win. She ran okay. How much of a key is it with her just getting less distance this afternoon?
I think a mile was a bit much, and clearly trying to go 2 turns on the turf in general, just her more compact sprint races have been much stronger. And speaking about being on a good roll, it's been a nice run in the last couple of weeks for Miguel Vasquez as well.
Yeah, quietly just does a great job. I'll tell you, if I owned or trained, he'd be on the short list of guys I'd want first call on my horses, without a doubt. Big fan of Miguel, turf and dirt. As we move on to the 4th race, as we had stated with Acacia's early pick 5, big favorite forthcoming in the 10, Witch Hunter, who, when it comes down to it, even looking at that last loss, and she did lose at 20 cents, and that's what scared me away. Her usual race, though, again, she's run 5 times, say perhaps her second start last early November in Miami Gardens. I get any one of her 4 other races probably wins this race and wins it pretty comfortably.
That was just my thinking, and I don't like at all seeing a horse that was beat like she was last time out, and she just could not get there in time. Blinkers go back on today, and she's going to be way over bet in this spot, but I did feel that she was a bit of a standout. But hey, you're not going to see anything from me if you're trying to find a price in here. I absolutely respect that, and this might be the perfect spot for it if you don't like the favorite.
That loss at 1-5, although still a benchmark against this entire field by, again, a comfortable margin, it just left a bad taste in my mouth, and the fact that she's going to be an odds-on favorite again, I said, okay, let me try to come up with somebody else, and I landed on the 8, Liza, and this is going to likely break 2 ways or 3. If Witch Hunter just wins, it's not going to matter, but I think Liza might just be an all-or-nothing type horse, and if she's an all horse, I'll hopefully look a little bit smart and a little bit shrewd for a change. One dirt race as a 2-year-old in early May of 2019. I don't care about that race when she was just outrun and didn't get bet up in the Big Apple. Her second and third start, she didn't get bet, of course, and didn't do any running, but they were against much better fields. And I'm going to go on the assumption that maybe she's evolved, maybe she's developed, and maybe she's matured a little bit since those last dirt starts in December and January, and a little more distance. Maybe she'll like a longer race against a field like this.
Yeah, she certainly could. She's out of a curling mare, and I think more than anything, she gets a pretty significant drop in class today, too.
Yeah, that drop in class, without a doubt. They pull no punches, and it looks like a realistic move, but maybe one that'll work and help her surprise a good amount of that field. Onto the turf for the fifth, our second race thus far, Acacia, today on the Gulfstream Park turf course with the rail set at 108 feet. We've got older 12.5 to 10.5 claimers, and why don't we pull up the replay of hands down the nucleus of this race, and that is the 8-year-old projected. And there's a little bit of a case as we go back to this horse's win just a few weeks ago in early May 3rd, in fact, at Tampa Bay Downs, and got a good trip, got a good ride, and showed up with a good effort at this stage of the game. But I do like on today's card as a whole, there is definitely, regarding the turf racing, there's a little bit of an old-timers day type flair with Panny Price coming up a bit later as the horse to beat in the 10th. And, of course, this guy, who, although he's lost a step to an extent as an 8-year-old, I still feel as though off this win a few weeks ago for 16, he is just, I think he's going to prove a very likely winner just running for 12.5 this afternoon.
Yeah, he certainly could, and I know that he is technically in another of a little bit of a softer spot. I don't think he beat the saltiest field last time, whereas I feel like this actually did come up a pretty strong 12.5. I respect him. He's a horse I certainly was a fan of, and we do kind of reach the point if we're wondering if his best races are behind him, and certainly for a horse like this, it's really encouraging to see him get back to the winner's circle. I think, and I would be happy to see him win. From a betting standpoint, I tried to take a stab against, but he is the center point of this race for sure. Mr. Discretionary caught my eye getting back on the grass, and he has not faced as tough, obviously, as projected has. But here's a stat with some food for thought on trainer Jane Sibeli, who's got a lot of strong-looking horses over the next couple of days here in Florida. With this kind of layoff in mid-level claiming races, she's got amazing numbers, which really kind of blew me away. 31% winning and a $5 plus ROI. Just some really good numbers of claiming horses who are able to come back strong off the bench.
So I'm curious, what's the mid-claiming as far as the claiming tag? So
it
this wouldn't be considered 12.5, wouldn't be considered lower?
It's not, because on DRF it's from 10,000 up.
Gotcha.
So just to kind of keep things. But to be honest, I actually did look at the low-level claiming, and they are similar numbers as well, which is surprising. Obviously, the ROI makes it a little bit bigger because it's 10,000 to 30 or 40. So it is a little bit of a bigger spread, but I still think it's a good food for thought stat.
No, a terrific barn. I mean, Jane has had a good run here in 2020 in general, but a very well-respected veteran trainer who's so good claiming horses and claims a lot. I mean, a really blue-collar, working-class type stable that she really maximizes without a doubt. We'll see with the speed there. I'd imagine the 4 hot and heavy may show some speed too. I guess it all depends upon your stance with the 8 projected, who, if I had put in an early pick 5, I may have singled him in this spot. We'll see what shakes out, of course, in that 5th race. As we take a little breather here on the show, quick timeout, you'll have more of vacation myself and a whole lot of money in that jackpot Rainbow 6 after this. Battleground this afternoon with that bright blue sky. Just couldn't have asked for a nicer day in the weather department with that slight breeze blowing in off the Atlantic Ocean. Just a straight shot east from us here at Gulfstream Park. Beautiful scene outside, one of our favorite vistas and views as we transition back into our respective studios. Welcome back, everybody. Second act. This is, I guess, Gulfstream Saturday's edition of Gulfstream Park. Today, 2.0 after that first time out, and we'll get tied on Acacia for good reason. 1.1 mil in this Rainbow Six.
Yeah, there's nothing to scoff at there for sure. As we said, a big carryover just to start, 1.1 million guaranteed in the Rainbow Six. And if you head over to our Gulfstream YouTube page, Ron Nicoletti and I talk through the sequence. You can see his ticket in a little bit more detail as well, so be sure to check that out, as we love hearing from Ronnie, especially on the Rainbow Six. But Jason, today I stepped it up a little bit, 64.80 as far as the Rainbow Six does go. I'm too deep with the rematching horses and War Detonator, and I'm a Pharaoh in this sixth race. But both you and I very curious, what are we going to get from Curlingo, the full brother to multiple Grade 1 winner Coralina? And then all in all, this is I thought, a really interesting sequence. Sprinting in the seventh race, I think Jade's Jelly, though a filly against the boys, could potentially get a nice trip in there for Wesley Ward, looking at a couple of others. Moving on, I think maybe a couple of highlights today, a little bit later on, the 10th race, that sprint. I did not use Pay Any Price, which makes me a bit nervous, but I'm trying to beat him, trying to get some prices in there for sure. And then we wrap things up in the last race where I'm 3 deep in there on the turf and that state bred allowance optional claiming.
64.80 for Acacia's ticket and today's 20-cent jackpot Rainbow Six. Excellent launching pad, though. We really kickstart this thing in high gear with a good-looking, almost wintertime, primetime winter Gulfstream Park maiden special weight for the 3-year-olds and up. And I think the narrative, at least for me, the first real bullet point is that aforementioned rematch you touched upon with the two that you used between War Detonator and I'm a Pharaoh. And we'll go back to their race last time out here, second week of April, and they both just ran very well with comparable trips. Now, in the case of War Detonator, who I like to turn the tables on, I'm a Pharaoh, he was coming in off quite the layoff. In fact, he had not run in about 18 and a half months, and considering he was wide and chasing in between, I like that he didn't give it up until deep stretch. But what can you say? The 13 I'm a Pharaoh ran great, too, only losing a tough one to the Chad Firster on the outside and Sir Winston, who closed him down.
Yeah, Sir Winston came flying late there, and I'm a Pharaoh looked like at 6-5 when he got into that race, it looked like he was going to be pretty tough, but unfortunately he's had 2 narrow defeats so far. But I feel like he's been beaten in both ones by a good one. I don't take anything away from him being beaten by Cajun Brother in his debut, as I think he's a talented sprinter as well. Both of those horses make a lot of sense. I alluded already to Curlingo, Full to Coralina. The bottom side, the Dam was a dirt sprinter. Obviously, Coralina was best going long, and you do have the Curlin influence on the top. So I'm curious if he'll want some more ground, but excited to see him in the flesh.
Definitely. Huge fan of Carolina, and admittedly, little bit of a filly I guess I had forgotten about to an extent. I mean, we've been privileged to see so many horses year after year, top horses, but going back and looking again at the immediate pedigree of Curlingo, I said, wow, she was really good during her 3-year-old season. How about a quick pop before we turn the page to the 6, Get the Money, Bernie? I'm wondering your opinion going into this thing, how you feel about his last race. I liked it personally. I liked his effort. I think this field, though, may be a lot tougher than the crew that he caught back on May 3rd.
That was exactly my thinking. And normally, and we've mentioned this before, Safi has a lot of good numbers with a lot of different moves, and first-time starters is not one of them, and some barns are like that. So to see him run so well as a firster and getting bet too, but that, I think, top to bottom was a bit of a softer spot than what he finds today.
Yeah, nice salty field to start the Rainbow Six as we move on to the opening leg of Saturday's late pick 5 on the turf and a very key rematch. You've got the filly Jade's Jelly, who I did use because of her style, and it may work really well in this race given the amount of speed and plethora of speed horses, most notably Miami Crockett, the 7, and the 6 Remaster as they knock heads, and you'll see their last start in a few seconds. But I wanted the filly too, but also also respect, of course, Remaster and Miami Crockett. I've got my single looming, and if Sir Seamus goes to the lead today, I think he's going to be a very difficult horse to run down. If he's rated or gets out sprinted and gets a lax ride, he's not going to win. He is one of the truest need-the-lead horses I can think of racing currently on this circuit, and I think that's a great spot for him, not only as far as the ability of the field goes, but with him being able to make the point with the Misael riding. Too deep in the 9th race, I am inside and more towards the outside, using the 1 Malibu Max for Todd. 7's a better fit for that horse than his last couple at 6, and the best recent form, hands down, belongs to the 7 front-loaded, so pretty confident with those two. 3 deep, including the old Warhorse Penny Price in the 10th race this afternoon. Jane Sabelli, in fact, has spent a good chunk of some of her turf sprinters' campaigns trying to take down Penny Price, and she'll take the Omens tried today, right, Acacia, sending out My Taiwan On and the 5, Coop Tries Harder.
That's right. It's actually a really fun little race for sure, and you've got some tough horses that know this Gulfstream Park turf course quite well.
Definitely. 349 for $27 to wrap things up in the late pick 5. And again, just backtracking to that key rematch. And again, I think it's almost a 2-tiered dialogue going into this race where you've got Miami Crockett and Remaster who are about to hook each other off the far turn run in their March 5th race. Now, Miami Crockett has since had a win since this race, whereas Remaster has not run back, and he'll go for new connections. You've got them, of course, these two horses who are solid in their own right against Jade Jelly. I really think that's basically 90% of this upcoming 7th race field.
I totally agree with you. I use the same 3 horses. I think you want the rematch coverage, but more than anything, I agree. It felt like Jade's Jelly might just sit the perfect trip, and I don't think we see many Wesley Ward reclaims either, which is kind of interesting, but I, like you, felt Remaster could potentially be just a little bit stronger. He's not a need-the-lead type like Miami Crockett is. Blinkers go back on, and I do like that Bobby DeBona, after claiming him, gave him a little bit of time. We're seeing him come back, and hopefully he kind of maybe sits right off of Miami Crockett in here.
Sounds good. That is a look at the 7th race field. Oh, we got a stat for Bobby D right off the claim here with Remaster. Good numbers.
While I'm talking about the horse that I like, let's show the stat. It's interesting because I narrowed this down to first time off the claim, adding blinkers. Not something he does very often, but obviously something that's had some good success. So I thought that was a nice little food for thought there as well. 2 for 6 winning, 4 for 6 in the money.
Now, speed, a big part of the game and subplot in that 7th race field. A different kind of race and a far longer race as we flip the page and move on to Saturday's 8. But in terms of just stylistically speaking, I think time and time again we have seen almost 2 versions of Sir Seamus. The one when he makes the lead, and he hasn't won all his starts when he's made the lead, but he's run far better. When you rate him, he's just not the same horse, including that lost 3 back at 1-5 when he sat 4th early in a 5-furlong sprint. I think if he makes the lead in this race, it's going to be good night, Irene. I'm going to call him a the simple class edge for me in this race with Sir Seamus.
I think he has the tactical edge in that he's maybe the main controlling speed in here. I didn't see a ton of really genuine speed. Maybe King Leonardo to the inside, but he can't really, recently doesn't seem like he's able to sustain it as much. So that could serve well for Sir Seamus, who I like as well. But I took a stab with Mystical Moon first off the claim for Victor Barboza. Just consistency overall, and he doesn't have to be too far back. So that's what I liked, in that he's not going to be one of these late kind of grinding closers as some of the others in here are.
Now, 5 races all together today on the main, and our racing and our action on the dirt comes to a close in race number 9, and we end things on a high note here. Pretty tough field, the 35K claimers. They go 7 furlongs. The best recent form, wet tracks aside, belongs to the 7 front-loaded, who, why don't we go back and look at his most recent race, which just paints him as a major player. He's rung up some pretty fast speed figures and just looks very solid in this race, assuming, of course, I guess maybe the real linchpin with him is, or question, will he be able to transfer that solid, razor-sharp recent form off the wet tracks that he's been getting to a dry track this afternoon?
Yeah, it is interesting for sure, and he does shorten up a little bit here, and I liked all around this day, so I was pretty happy about that. But front loaded has been consistent. It's just been a while since he's been able to get to the winner's circle, and this was a very, very close finish there down to the wire. he's going to be really well bet off of those last couple of races. And I feel like it's not necessarily a walk in the park for him. So I respect the number 1 Malibu Max in here for sure. My long shot of the day is the number 8 High Riverside, who is taking a bit of a drop today, has some back class as well. So I'm hoping that that's going to come into place at a little bit softer competition versus what he's been facing. I mean, Mios and Vacoma in some of his recent races.
Absolutely. His races 2 and 3 back, those fields
Yeah.
are about as salty as it can be, running in an overnight stake or an allowance race. And maybe at this stage of the game, he doesn't like a sloppy track anymore. If that's the case, he could be really dirtied up off that last start, and he's going to be a nice price this afternoon. I'm going to take Malibu Max, who is following that same barn change we saw that worked yesterday with Pick Up the Phone. I was proud of her and happy for her getting the victory first time out for Todd. She showed a lot of gameness in that race. 10th race does kick off an all-turf late double, and we bring on the conversation and dialogue of Paney Price. And this does feel occasion, doesn't it? When you look back to maybe the circumspect questions and just the overall uncertainty surrounding Paney Price last January 5th, when he was coming in off about a 7.5-month layoff, had gone from a 9-year-old with a limited campaign in 2019 to a now 10-year-old in 2020. And I think that was the real conversation. Would he be up to snuff back on January 5th? He won that race. Well, we have similar questions this afternoon, and I spoke with Rich Averill. I'll turn it over to you, Acacia, but I'll just read this quote real fast. And Rich doesn't lack confidence, that's for sure, but there's almost a quiet confidence when I talked to him yesterday concerning Paney Price. And he told me, because his last 2 races obviously aren't pretty looking on paper, but he said came out of his last race at Tampa with a little issue, and we gave him all the time he needed and deserved. He's trained like his old self, and we're very optimistic he's going to run well at the young age of 10. And I think that's the one thing in talking to Rich Averill, who's been the majority owner of Paney Price through the majority of his career. Rich basically said if this horse hadn't shown, I guess, just the fire or competitive spirit regarding his training coming off this little bit of a layoff, probably would have just called it a day and sent them out to retire on a farm somewhere. But horses showing that he still wants to do it, and I'm gonna go back to the old pro here in Paney Price.
Now he's awesome. He certainly is, and he's been just so solid. My biggest question, and it is good to hear that he had an issue and it was taken care of, and he was given that time that he needed. And certainly, I've certainly worked with Rich. His horses he wanted to retire. They're great owners, and I know that this is a horse Georgina rides in the morning as well, full length of legs. She's the only one that can handle him because he is a bit quirky. So he's fun, certainly, to watch him. Again, though, my biggest concern from a handicapping standpoint was that I don't know if we've seen him in poor form is not the word because he was facing good horses for sure, but maybe haven't seen such disappointing efforts as we did in the last couple. So I did wonder if maybe we are going to see his sharpest today. That said, I hope he comes back and runs a hole in the wind like he has recently. I, though, took a stab with Coop Tries Harder, who does have the recency, ran behind a good one in Tiger Blood last out.
Beating a neck in a tough loss against Tiger Blood last time out, who is among the Paney Price type ilk, without a doubt. No slouch in his own right. And you've got the other Sabelli horse, My Tai One On, who is solid, and he is a horse that not only caught a razor sharp Faction Cat, who for Georgina went 5/8 and 53-4 at Tampa back in late February. This horse doesn't want to go a mile, right?
No, and not against Halliday or Croy either, I don't think.
Yeah, good point there. Coming out of a good loss, or at least a good field loss against Halliday, who has done some nice things. We'll do the last race quickly here, and for me, this was a race that almost had 2 major bullet points. The first of which was this April 4th race we'll bring you, and concerning the grudge match this afternoon between Yolanda's Pride and Ghostly Beauty, who both had good trips. I still think Yolanda's Pride ran the better race, and there is a real cookie-cutter sameness with, although Ghostly Beauty's form has been consistent and she picks up checks, that sameness and, again, kind of cookie-cutter stamp worries me a little bit because she has dead aim here and can't deliver that knockout punch at 6-5 odds, whereas Yolanda's Pride just did not want to give an inch down on the rail. I respect those 2 horses, and Jane Sabelli, who, as you said, is busy today, and that is the truth. She's back in the mix here in the nightcap with the 4 Sun Summers runners who I thought might run well off a bit of a layoff. You're towards the outside, and who do you got here? The 11 looking like a queen.
I took this one on the drop. It's second off the claim for Ron Spats, but I thought all in all this one has some pretty solid form and could keep up actually beating Ghostly Beauty 2 starts back. So we'll see back towards this level if that's better for her. And I just wanted to mention during that replay, you could see Ghostly Beauty kind of lugging in a little bit as Luis Saez was trying to get her to switch leads, which she did pretty belatedly as well. That's kind of a similar thing that we've seen in the stretch, so it makes her a little bit tough to trust at a short price, but she's been as consistent as they come.
No, she has been. She's got top connections, and she's well posted. She does, however, have her work cut out for her as we gear up for an 11-race card. We'll have Ronnie off site. We've got Pete upstairs, and he's coming up next with those scratches and changes.